Hi team, welcome back to week 5 of the 6-week nutritional program for you to sell to your clients as a personal trainer. This week we look at vegetables and ready, willing, able. Let's begin. So team, I say it every week, make sure that you have read the dossier or the document. Make sure you're following along with us. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to the first video because we build on the concepts as we go through. Below every video, there's a link to every single thing you're gonna need to deliver this program. Nice, short, and simple. That's the goal. We're trying to stay in scope of practice and help clients understand their nutrition better, and we're going to educate them to do the best they possibly can in the nutritional space. So, step 1 of this week is like every other. We're going to do our check-in. We're going to weigh our clients in. We're going to do the tape measure around anything that the client's hoping to shrink or to grow. Very important. We are taking any documents off them so we can store them. We are letting the client discuss with us anything they found challenging, everything they found really good or fun or notable, and we are troubleshooting any problems that they're having. If they're having troubles with ingesting enough water, we suggest that they slowly increase their water by 100 mils every week. If they're not getting enough steps, we might encourage them to do 200 to 500 extra steps a week as they progress. If they're pulling up sore, we might encourage them to do 2 minutes of stretching a night. Very, very small changes over long periods of time is the goal of this program, to show the client that that is traditionally the way that they're going to see the most amount of results long term. There is no short fix for nutrition. In this part of the session 1, the check-in, remember I always say let the client do most of the talking. This kind of content is very monologue heavy. You will be talking at the client a lot, just to help them understand stuff. So you must give them the opportunity to feel like they're a part of the team, to be able to discuss stuff. When in doubt, if your client is struggling with that engagement, ask open-ended questions. Questions that don't end with a yes or a no. It's always, so what was the most interesting thing you found this week? What was the hardest thing you found this week? Not, did you find this week hard? Did you find this week easy? Because that's a yes or a no answer instead of an open-ended question. Step 2, let's talk about the main concept of the day, which is vegetables. All I need you to know, and what I need you to relay to the client, is that vegetables fall into the category of carbohydrates. They cross the line, because last week we discussed about carbohydrates, that there's sugars, there's starches, and there's fibers. That is some of the main things, at least in this context, that carbohydrates fall into. Our vegetables are responsible for a lot of the fibrous stuff in our bodies. They provide lots of micronutrients to your body. Macronutrients are big. Think protein, think carbs, think fats. These are big macronutrients. In fact, we can even chuck water into there because water is incredibly relevant. These are massive things. Micronutrients are little things like your vitamins and your minerals. They do a hell of a lot in accumulation, but only tiny things by themselves. And how you're going to pitch this to the client is this. Think of your macronutrients as the body of your car or the engine. It's a big, visible thing, and we understand what it does. The body keeps us in it, and the engine is the energy-providing thing inside the car. But the micronutrients are things like the wiring, the seat belts, the bolts holding in the wheel. It's all these little things that you never really think about, but are equally as important at keeping our car running. With vegetables, we use vegetables to help with weight loss. So traditionally, a lot of clients use vegetables, and particularly fibrous vegetables, to help appetite suppressant, to fill us up without kind of introducing too much calorie intake. So last week we talked about the 4 quadrants of foods, how we have stuff that's calorie rich, calorie poor. We have stuff that's nutritionally rich and nutritionally poor. That's fine. Vegetables sit traditionally in the calorie poor, nutritionally rich space. Starchy vegetables like potatoes are really good at giving us energy and filling us up, where stuff like broccoli and things like celery provide lots of space and very vitamins, like very rich fluids and very rich vitamins, but they don't necessarily contribute much to our calorie input. So for weight loss clients, traditionally they rely quite heavily on vegetables. And when we're manipulating a client's macronutrients, we might add more vegetables and reduce carbohydrates to help people trend towards weight loss if their weight is not changing. Okay, so it's very valuable in that regard, okay? And in the document, in the dossier, it's gonna tell you some of the things we're gonna mention to the client, as well as some of the scripts to follow. So don't stress if you're not quite sure what to tell the client. I understand that vegetables and carbs, since they cross over a little bit, can be confusing. For example, fruits are both vegetables and carbohydrates in this context, okay? Since they are giving us energy, nutrients, they're doing two things, okay? So they fall into that category. So some people will use vegetables both in their carbohydrates and in their vegetables. So the reason we don't muck with people's vegetables, usually we say fists, I tell clients you can have as many fists of vegetables as you want. So you've probably noticed this week there isn't a set amount of vegetables the client needs to eat. It should say somewhere between 6 and 12 vegetables as hunger requires. People will tell me, well, doesn't that mean my clients will overeat? No, because if I've told my client they're only allowed 4 cups or 4 servings of carbs a day, or 6 servings of carbs a day, depending on their goal, they can't exceed that amount with their vegetables. If they hit their 6 cups of, let's say they choose to have potatoes and pumpkin and fruit, they quickly find that they've hit their 6 cups. If they want to eat more, they now need to rely more on the fibrous vegetables, stuff that isn't very calorie rich, things like cauliflower and things like carrots and things like broccoli, stuff that doesn't have a huge starch or a huge sugar content. Does that make sense? Read the dossier or the document if you're at all having issues understanding that concept. What I need you to do is this. The activity this week is we're going to write on a board the 5 colors that you're going to run into for vegetables. You're going to have red. You're going to have green. You're going to have white, orange, and purple. The one that confuses everyone. When we're talking about the colors of vegetables, if I was to get 1 serving of each of these colors, you would more or less get most of the nutrients we need to get out of vegetables. So we stick to the 5 colors because it's simple for clients to understand. So when we're dissecting the vegetables or the fruits that we're ingesting, the inner tissue, the inner flesh of the vegetable or fruit is the color that we're going to use. So for example, an apple may have a red surface, but it itself is a white vegetable because the inside of it is white. A blueberry has, yes, a bluish outside, but it's purple on the inside. Same with like purple spinach or eggplant. It's more purple than it is any other color. So what I want you to do with your client is you're going to write up these 5 colors and you're going to ask for 2 to 3 examples of vegetables or fruits that they like of these colors. Quickly, you might get tomato, you might get green beans or broccoli or something. You might get, you might get potatoes for white, you might get oranges or carrots for orange, and you might get blueberries for purple. The challenge, that discussion is going to be great. You're going to let the clients engage with you. It's easier to find what they like. A good way to do this is ask them what they don't like, because we're not going to suggest or even recommend they eat any of those things. We just want to bring the client's attention to stuff that they like that are in those colors. I'm never going to tell the client to eat more avocado or eat more potato or eat more tomato. That's not in my scope of practice. I can't say, hey, I need you to have 1 serving of tomato a day. What I can say is, what is a red vegetable or fruit that you really, really like? Tomato, that's excellent. This week, I need you to have 1 serving of each of the colors of whatever vegetable or fruit that you like of your choice. It doesn't matter what it is, but it has to be something that you like. So see the difference? I haven't prescribed them to do anything. That's out of my scope. What I have done is they've told me what they're already eating, and now I'm giving them a recommended serving size, which is all just based off the literature. That's not something that I'm making up. That's just what's suggested by the health commissions, okay? So the challenge this week is I want the clients to try to have at least one serving a day of each of the colors of vegetables. That's the challenge. So we're going to give them the document this week that's similar to the proteins and the carbs one. There's it'll just give them all the different colors of vegetables we're discussing and some examples of what they can have. And that's going to be in your link. That's going to be in one of the printouts you're going to provide. Vegetables are a little bit easier because, again, they don't have necessarily a set serving size. We just ask that they have no less than one serving size per color. They can have as many as they want, but we try to aim for no less than one serving size per color. Usually 6 to 8 is kind of what we find most people run with. Over time, guys, I need you to understand that most clients will fail on this aspect of the nutritional course because it's too much brain power. But what this does seem to do is it gives the clients the understanding that they have to have a large serving of vegetables to help them stay full. It's just bringing them attention to stuff. You'll find that most people, when looking at a plate, won't have the correct amount of serving size of vegetable compared to everything else. Because if they have rice and then also potato, that's double servings of carbs. Because as we know, pumpkin and potato are still starchy carbohydrates and vegetables. So they're having double servings of carbs without realizing, just because they don't have that nutritional literacy that we're trying to teach them now. So these are things I need you to remember, and these are things I need you to consider. But just for this week, give them that printout and go through with them on the whiteboard each of the different colors and some things and vegetables and fruits that relate to those colors. Even better yet, if you're a visual kind of trainer, buy one example of each of the colors and show them so they can hold it in their hand. Massively valuable to be able to hold these things in your hand. Next on our list, team, similar to good, better, best, we have another saying which is called ready, willing, and able. Ready, willing, and able. We do not use this as much as we use good, better, best. Good, better, best I use every single day because every single day I get to make the decision of, does this thing nutritionally help me towards my goal or step me away from my goal? Ready, willing, able helps us decide if what we're about to decide as a goal is reasonable or not. Okay? So in nutrition, people often set really unrealistic goals because they don't run it through this filtering system. I want you to think of ready, willing, able as a big sieve for ideas. Ideas that get through the sieve are really, really good, but most of them are going to get filtered out as erratic or not quite what we're looking for. We are looking for goals that are achievable, that are not going to de-incentivize my client. So, for example, if I say to a client says to me, I want to lose 20 kilos in 3 weeks, it's just not possible when I run it through the system that we're about to look through. And so firstly, they won't hit their goal, so they'll be disheartened. And then they're going to be a little bit shell-shocked or just resistant to doing it again because they've been punished or they haven't got reward for the system they just did. So they've had a bad association with goal setting. And it has nothing to do other than they didn't set a reasonable parameter to start with. So inside the document, the example we use is if they wanted to run 5 kilometers every day to lose weight. So your client says, I want to increase the amount of steps I'm doing, so I'm going to run 5 kilometers a day. We need to run this through the ready, willing, able system. And it's quite simple. And again, we're not going to use it all the time, but just whenever our clients are doing a nutritional goal or a fitness goal. So the question is, is the client ready to do a 5 kilometer run? Do they have the correct footwear? Have they planned out the path they're going to do? Have they set an alarm to get up at the time? Have they scheduled at a time that's going to be the most appropriate, where they're not going to run into hurdles? These are things they need to consider if they're ready to do that. Do they have perhaps kids who might interfere with the times that they're able to do running? Willing comes down to, are they willing? If let's say they don't really have time to run in the afternoon, so they have to run really early in the mornings. The question is, are they willing to do that? If from their ready assessment, they find they really only have time to run at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, are they willing to do that? They might find through their ready that the path they have to take is through maybe a sketchy area. Are they willing to run through that sketchy area? Or is it a little bit off-road and they have to do a little bit of off-road running? Are they willing to do that? And then able. Are they actually physically able to do the task? Can they run 5 kilometers? Have they ever run before? Is their body acclimatized to the idea of running every single day? Is their soft tissue designed and strengthened to do that? Or have they never run before? Our goal is not to decentivize, it's to rationalize what is reasonable. So we get this goal, we run it through our system. It may be that that's not reasonable for them. It may be that it is fine. They do have a path. They are absolutely got a time frame that they're willing to do it in, and they're physically strong enough to be able to run 5 kilometers a day, but they may not be. So instead we might say, hey, look, we're still going to run 5 kilometers because you're ready, willing, and able. The 5 kilometers isn't the issue. Running every day, maybe you're not ready, willing, and able to do that. So we're only going to run 3 times a week. Instead of getting up at 6 o'clock, we might have to get up at 7 o'clock because kids are a limiter. We might find that we're in a dodgy neighborhood. We have to drive a little bit out of that neighborhood. We're just trying to find solutions to make it so that this goal can be done at a 90% accuracy. How we know that we've chosen something appropriate is that it can be done at 90%, meaning that if I was to give them a checklist on this goal, and this is why we do it for nutrition, anything less than 90% was too big of an ask. So if my client I've asked them to have vegetables every single day, and we're finding that they are not getting there. They're only doing 60% accuracy. So they're good on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but for some reason the other days, they cannot get their 5 servings of vegetables. I've asked too much of them at the minute in their life. That's not to say they're a bad person. That's not telling that they're not doing the stuff, they're ignoring you or they're being rude, or we're just asked too much. And for not everyone's starting at the same spots. So we as their coach need to be able to adjust the program to be able to help the client reach the 90% goal. Okay? So your client, you might only ask them over time, you'll drop the requirements until they're getting 90%. So you might back it up until you're just back to water and steps. And when they get 90% accurate with water and steps, then you progress them onto proteins. And it might take the client 3 weeks to then get proficient with proteins before you move them on. So if you're doing a one-on-one setting, you can really slowly introduce strategies to get towards 90% instead of dumping them all at once. In a group setting, the herd keeps everyone together. If they fall behind, it's harder to help them because there's so many people to help. But the point is 90% consistency is the goal that we're trying to achieve for our clients, and is a good indicator if the content you're giving them is too much. If they're falling behind, you might need to pause, let them catch up, and then continue on. Okay, just to give you some context of don't beat your clients up if they're not getting the consistency you're after, and don't beat yourself up because it might not be a delivery problem. It's just we haven't looked at what some of the core issues are. Remember, this is a very condensed, intense 6 weeks, where usually I might do this program over the period of 12 weeks or a year, depending on my client's need. But right now, keep in mind, this is just to lay the foundations, which is going to be very helpful for you in the next step when we upsell the client to the next step. So them not getting 90% is a good upsell for you later on. But if the client understands that 90% is the goal, and also describe to them exactly as I just did to you about why they might be finding themselves fail, and that we like to run with this 90% before we move on, this might be where we start introducing the upsell that we'll look at in the following weeks. Before they go, make sure you've taken all the documents off them, you've weighed them in, you've done your tape measure, you've discussed with them the 5 different colors of vegetables, they understand which vegetables they want, you've given them the relative printout sheets that correlates with them. Hopefully you're not still taking money off them. That should have been well since resolved. We make sure that they understand their carbs, they understand their fats, they understand their steps, and they understand their water. Everything should starting to be quite smooth now. The last thing to do is fats, which is next week, of course. What I need you to do for step 5 is prepare for next week. It's one of the last weeks, or it is the last week. So we're going to add on how to upsell, and we're going to look at where we can start funneling our clients so that we can continually make money and so we can start putting them where we think they're needed. And also it's going to touch on probably the most complicated topic, that is fats. Okay, so please do read up on it. Make sure that you're well aware, go over the content, rewatch these videos as much as you can until you're feeling confident, and I will see you next week for fats.